Oppose book worship. No investigation, no right to speak. Some of our friends on the left could learn a lot from this work. So that's why we're reading this one. Written May 1930. Unless you have investigated a problem, you will be deprived of the right to speak on it. Isn't that too harsh? Not in the least. When you have not probed into a problem, into the present facts and its past history, and know nothing of its essentials, whatever you say about it will undoubtedly be nonsense. Talking nonsense solves no problems, as everyone knows. So why is it unjust to deprive you of the right to speak? Quite a few comrades always keep their eyes shut and talk nonsense. And for a communist, that is disgraceful. How can a communist keep his eyes shut and talk nonsense? It won't do. It won't do. You must investigate. You must not talk nonsense. Part 2. To investigate a problem is to solve it. You can't solve a problem? Well, get down and investigate the present facts and its past history. When you have investigated the problem thoroughly, you will know how to solve it. Conclusions invariably come after investigation, and not before. Only a blockhead cudgels his brains on his own, or together with a group, to find solution or evolve an idea without making any investigation. It must be stressed that this cannot possibly lead to any effective solution or any good idea. In other words, he is bound to arrive at a wrong solution and a wrong idea. There are not a few comrades doing inspection work, as well as guerrilla leaders and cadres newly in office, who like to make political pronouncements the moment they arrive at a place, and who strut about criticizing this and condemning that when they have only seen the surface of things or minor details. Such purely subjective, nonsensical talk is indeed detestable. These people are bound to make a mess of things, lose the confidence of the masses, and prove incapable of solving any problems at all. When they come across difficult problems, quite a number of people in leading positions simply heave a sigh without being able to solve them. They lose patience and ask to be transferred on the grounds that they have not the ability and cannot do the job. These are cowards' words. Just get moving on your two legs. Go the rounds of every section placed under your charge and inquire into everything, as Confucius did. And then you will be able to solve the problems. However little is your ability, for although your head may be empty before you go out of doors, it will be empty no longer when you return, but will contain all sorts of material necessary for the solution of the problems. And that is how problems are solved. Must you go out of doors? Not necessarily. You can call a fact finding meeting of people familiar with the situation in order to get at the source of what you call a difficult problem and come to know how it stands now. And then it will be easy to solve your difficult problem. Investigation may be likened to the long months of pregnancy and solving a problem to the day of birth. To investigate a problem is, indeed, to solve it. Number 3, oppose book worship. Whatever is written in a book is right. Such is still the mentality of culturally backward Chinese peasants. Strangely enough, within the Communist Party, there are also people. It is profound, but the chat. Solve the problem and it's not hard anymore is kind of profound. Absolutely. But remember, he also paired it as well with go out of doors, or you don't even have to go out of doors. You can also form a committee or invite people that know the solution or know the problems firsthand and invite them in a committee to talk with you and learn of the problem that way. So you can either go out of doors or you can have people come in that know the problem and investigate that way in a like committee, and then it won't be as hard to solve the problem anymore. Your difficult problem won't be so difficult. It certainly is difficult when you're just, sitting by yourself trying to investigate the problem by yourself, even with the internet, right? Even with our tools that are available to us. Because many, many eyes and many people looking at it that all have the same goal and the same purpose, that political unity, then you can better arise at a realistic solution to the problem rather than just trying to feel out the solution by yourself in your bedroom, or trying to vibe what you think like DPRK is like based on what you're seeing in a YouTube video and Wikipedia. Check out my other videos on the channel. Okay. Number 3, oppose book worship. This is another important one. This is a great section right here. Whatever is written in a book is right. Such is still the mentality of culturally backward Chinese peasants. Strangely enough, within the Communist Party, there are also people who always say in a discussion, show me where it's written in a book. When we say that a directive of a higher organ of leadership is correct, that is not just because it comes from a higher organ of leadership, but because its contents conform with both the objective and subjective circumstances of the struggle and meet its requirements. It is wrong to take a formalistic attitude and blindly carry out directives without discussing and examining them in the light of the actual conditions simply because they come from a higher organ. It is the mischief done by this formalism which explains why the line and tactics of the party do not take deeper root among the masses. To carry out a directive of a higher organ blindly, and seemingly without any disagreement, is not really to carry it out, but is the most artful way of opposing or sabotaging it. The method of studying the social sciences exclusively from the book is likewise extremely dangerous, and may even lead one onto the road of counter-revolution. Clear proof of this is provided by the fact that whole batches of Chinese communists who confine themselves to books in their study of social sciences have turned into counter-revolutionaries. When we say Marxism is correct, it is certainly not because Marx was a prophet, but because his theory has been proved correct in our practice and in our struggle. We need Marxism in our struggle. In our acceptance of his theory, no such formalization of mystical notion as that of prophecy ever enters our minds. Many who have read Marx's books have become renegades from the revolution, whereas illiterate workers often grasp Marxism very well. Of course, we should study Marx's books, but this study must be integrated with our country's actual conditions. We need books, but we must overcome book worship, which is divorced from the actual situation. How can we overcome book worship? The only way is to investigate the actual situation. Hard here soon. Part 4. Without investigating the actual situation, there is bound to be an idealist appraisal of class forces and an idealistic guidance in work, resulting either in opportunism or putschism. Do you doubt this conclusion? Facts will force you to accept it. Just try and appraise the political situation or guide the struggle without making any investigation, and you will see whether or not such appraisal or guidance is groundless and idealist, and whether or not it will lead to opportunist or putschist errors. Certainly it will. This is not because of failure to make careful plans before taking action, but because of failure to study the specific social situation carefully before making the plans. As often happens in our Red Army guerrilla units, officers of the Li Kao type do not discriminate when they punish the men for offenses. As a result, the offenders feel they have been unfairly treated. Many disputes ensue, and the leaders lose all prestige. Does this not happen frequently in the Red Army? We must wipe out idealism and guard against all opportunist and putschist errors before we can succeed in winning over the masses and defeating the enemy. The only way to wipe out idealism is to make the effort and investigate the actual situation. Yeah, so like an example of putschism, for example, even though a lot of people sort of forget it now, and even though, of course, we know all the problems with the Communist Party USA, what the ACP did, for example, by claiming to be a reformation of the Communist Party USA, that's putschism. That's like their attempted coup of the CPUSA. That's a modern example of it right there. Number 5. Kronstadt Rebellion. Number 5. The aim of social and economic investigation is to arrive at a correct appraisal of class forces and then to formulate correct tactics for the struggle. This is our answer to the question: why do we have to investigate social and economic conditions? Accordingly, the object of our investigation is all the social classes, and not fragmentary social phenomena. Of late, the comrades in the Fourth Army of the Red Army have generally given attention to the work of investigation, but the method many of them employ is wrong. The results of their investigation are therefore as trivial as a grocer's account, or resemble like the many strange tales a country bumpkin hears when he comes to town, or like a distant view of a populous city from a mountaintop. This kind of investigation is of little use and cannot achieve our main purpose. Our main purpose is to learn the political and economic situation of the various social classes. The outcome of our investigation should be a picture of the present situation of each class and the ups and downs of its development. For example, when we investigate the composition of the peasantry, not only must we know the number of owner peasants, semi-owner peasants, and tenant peasants, who are differentiated according to tenancy relationships, but more especially we must know the number of rich peasants, middle peasants, and poor peasants, who are differentiated according to class or stratum. When we investigate the composition of the merchants, not only must we know the number in each trade, such as grain, clothing, medicinal herbs, etc., but more especially, we must know the number of small merchants, middle merchants, and big merchants. We should investigate not only the state of each trade, but more especially the class relations within it. We should investigate the relationships not only between the different trades, but more especially between the different classes. Our chief method of investigation must be to dissect the different social classes, the ultimate purpose being to understand their interrelations, to arrive at a correct appraisal of class forces, and then to formulate the correct tactics for the struggle, defining which classes constitute the main force in the revolutionary struggle, which classes are to be won over as allies, and which classes are to be overthrown. This is our sole purpose. What are the social classes requiring investigation? They are the industrial proletariat, the handicraft workers, the farm laborers, the poor peasants, the urban poor, the lumpen proletariat, the master handicraftsmen, the small merchants, the middle peasants, the rich peasants, the landlords, commercial bourgeoisie, and the industrial bourgeoisie. In our investigation, we should give attention to the state of all these classes or strata. Only the industrial proletariat and the industrial bourgeoisie are absent in the areas where we are now working, and we constantly come across all the others. Our tactics of struggle are tactics in relation to all these classes and strata. Another serious shortcoming in our past investigations has been the undue stress on the countryside to the neglect of the towns, so that many comrades have always been vague about our tactics towards the urban poor and the commercial bourgeoisie. The development of the struggle has enabled us to leave the mountains for the plains. We have descended physically, but we are still up in the mountains mentally. We must understand the towns as well as the countryside. or we shall be unable to meet the needs of the revolutionary struggle. Part 6. Victory in China's revolutionary struggle will depend on the Chinese comrades' understanding of Chinese conditions. The aim of our struggle is to attain socialism via the stage of democracy. In this task, the first step is to complete the democratic revolution by winning the majority of the working class and arousing the peasant masses and the urban poor for the overthrow of the landlord class, imperialism, and the Kuomintang regime. The next step is to carry out the socialist revolution, which will follow on the development of this struggle. The fulfillment of this great revolutionary task is no simple or easy job, and will depend entirely on correct and firm tactics on the part of the proletarian party. If its tactics of struggle are wrong, or irresolute and wavering, the revolution will certainly suffer temporary defeat. It must be borne in mind that the bourgeois parties, too, constantly discuss their tactics of struggle. They are considering how to spread reformist influences among the working class, so as to mislead it and turn it away from the Communist Party leadership. How to get the rich peasants to put down the uprisings of the poor peasants, and how to organize gangsters to suppress the revolutionary struggles. In a situation when the class struggle grows increasingly acute and is waged at close quarters, the proletariat has to depend for its victory entirely on the correct and firm tactics of struggle of its own party, the Communist Party. A Communist Party's correct and unswerving tactics of struggle can in no circumstance be created by a few people sitting in an office. They emerge in the course of mass struggle, that is, through actual experience. Therefore, we must at all times study social conditions and make practical investigations. Those comrades who are inflexible, conservative, formalistic, and groundlessly optimistic think that the present tactics of struggle are perfect, that the book of documents of the party's Sixth National Congress guarantees lasting victory, and that one can always be victorious merely by adhering to the established methods. These ideas are absolutely wrong and have nothing in common with the idea that communists should create favorable new situations through struggle. They represent a purely conservative line. Unless it is completely discarded, this line will cause great losses to the revolution and do harm to these comrades themselves. There are obviously some comrades in our Red Army who are content to leave things as they are, who do not seek to understand anything thoroughly, and are groundlessly optimistic. And they spread the fallacy that this is proletarian. They eat their fill and sit dozing in their offices all day long, without ever moving a step, and going out among the masses to investigate. When they open their mouths, their platitudes make people sick. To awaken these comrades, we must raise our voices and cry out to them. Change your conservative ideas without delay. Replace them by progressive and militant communist ideas. Get into the struggle. Go among the masses and investigate the facts. Part 7. The technique of investigation. 1. Hold fact-finding meetings and undertake investigation through discussions. This is the only way to get near the truth. The only way to draw conclusions. It is easy to commit mistakes if you do not hold fact-finding meetings for investigation through discussions, but simply rely on one individual relating his own experience. You cannot possibly draw more or less correct conclusions at such meetings if you put questions casually, instead of raising key questions for discussion. 2. What kind of people should attend the fact-finding meeting? They should be people well acquainted with social and economic conditions. As far as age is concerned, older people are best because they are rich in experience and not only know what is going on but understand the causes and effects. Young people with experience of struggle should be also included because they have progressive ideas and sharp eyes. As far as occupation is concerned, there should be workers, peasants, merchants, intellectuals, and occasionally soldiers, and sometimes even vagrants. Naturally, when a particular subject is being looked into, those who have nothing to do with it need not be present. For example, workers, peasants, and students need not attend when commerce is the subject of investigation. Three. Which is better, a large fact-finding meeting or a small one? That depends on the investigator's ability to conduct a meeting. If he is good at it, a meeting of as many as a dozen or even 20 or more people can be called. A large meeting has its advantages. From the answers you get fairly accurate statistics, e.g. in finding out the percentage of poor peasants in the total peasant population, and fairly correct conclusions, e.g. in finding out whether the equal or indifferent differentiated land distribution is better. Of course, it has its disadvantages too. Unless you are skillful in conducting meetings, you will find it difficult to keep order. So the number of people attending a meeting depends on the competence of the investigator. However, the minimum is 3, or otherwise the information obtained will be too limited to correspond to the real situation. 4. Prepare a detailed outline for the investigation. A detailed outline should be prepared beforehand, and the investigator should ask questions according to the outline, with those present at the meeting giving their answers. Any points which are unclear or doubtful should be put up for discussion. The detailed outline should include main subjects and subheadings, and also detailed items. For instance, taking commerce as the main subject, it can have such subheadings as cloth, grain, other necessities, and medicinal herbs. Again, under cloth, there can be such detailed items as calico, homespun, and silk and satin. 5. Personal participation. Everyone with responsibility for giving leadership, from the chairman of the township government to the chairman of the central government, from the detachment leader of the commander-in-chief, from the secretary of a party branch to the general secretary, must personally undertake investigation into the specific social and economic conditions, and not merely rely on reading reports. For investigation and reading reports are two entirely different things. Number 6. Probe deeply. Anyone new to investigation work should make 1 or 2 thorough investigations in order to gain full knowledge of a particular place, say a village or a town, of a particular problem, say the problem of grain or currency. Deep probing into a particular place or problem will make future investigation of other places and problems easier. 7. make your own notes. The investigator should not only preside at fact-finding meetings and give proper guidance to those present, but should also make his own notes and record and record the results himself. To have others do it for him is no good. And there we go. That is Comrade Mao Zedong's Oppose Book Worship, written May 1930. Combat Liberalism, from September 7th, 1937. We stand for active ideological struggle, because it is the weapon for ensuring unity within the party and the revolutionary organizations in the interest of our fight. Every communist and revolutionary should take up this weapon. Sounds like something else someone said. Something that sounds like something someone else says a lot of the times. This person that I know a little bit. But liberalism rejects ideological struggle and stands for unprincipled peace, thus giving rise to a decadent Philistine attitude and bringing about political degeneration in certain units and individuals in the party and the revolutionary organizations. Liberalism manifests itself in various ways. To let things slide for the sake of peace and friendship when a person has clearly done wrong. And refrain from principled argument because he's an old acquaintance, a fellow townsman, a schoolmate, a close friend, a loved one, an old colleague, or an old subordinate. Or to touch on the matter lightly instead of going into it thoroughly, so as to keep on good terms. The result is that both the organization and the individual are harmed. This is one type of liberalism. To indulge in irresponsible criticism in private, instead of actively putting forward one's suggestions to the organization. To say nothing to people to their faces, but to gossip behind their backs, or to say nothing at a meeting, but to gossip afterwards. To show no regard at all for the principles of collective life, but to follow one's own inclination. This is a second type. To let things drift if they do not affect one personally. To say as little as possible, while knowing perfectly well what is wrong. To be worldly wise, and play safe and seek only to avoid blame. This is a third type. Not to obey orders, but to give pride of place to one's own opinions. To demand special consideration from the organization, but to reject its discipline. This is a fourth type. To indulge in personal attacks, pick quarrels, vent personal spite, or seek revenge, instead of entering into an argument and struggling against incorrect views for the sake of unity or progress or getting the work done properly. This is a fifth type. To hear incorrect views without rebutting them, and even to hear counter-revolutionary remarks without reporting them, but instead to take them calmly, as if nothing had happened. This is a sixth type. To be among the masses and fail to conduct propaganda and agitation, or speak at meetings, or conduct investigations and inquiries among them, and instead to be indifferent to them, to show no concern for their well-being, forgetting that one is a communist and behaving as if one were an ordinary non-communist. This is a seventh type. To see someone harming the interests of the masses and yet not feel indignant, or dissuade or stop him, or reason with him, but to allow him to continue. This is an eighth type. To work half-heartedly without a definite plan or direction. To work perfunctorily, and muddle along. Quote, so long as one remains a monk, one goes on toiling the bell. Unquote. This is the ninth type. To regard oneself as having rendered great service to the revolution, to pride oneself on being a veteran, to disdain minor assignments, while being quite unequal to major tasks, to be a slipshod in work and slack in study. This is a 10th type. To be aware of one's own mistakes and yet make no attempt to correct them, taking a liberal attitude towards oneself. This is an 11th type. We could name more, but these 11 are the principal types. They are all manifestations of liberalism. Liberalism is extremely harmful in a revolutionary collective. It is a corrosive which eats away unity, undermines cohesion, causes apathy, and creates dissension. It robs the revolutionary ranks of compact organization and strict discipline, prevents policies from being carried through, and alienates the party organizations from the masses which the party leads. It is an extremely bad tendency. Liberalism stems from petty bourgeois selfishness. It places personal interest first and the interests of the revolution second. And this gives rise to ideological, political, and organizational liberalism. People who are liberals look upon the principles of Marxism as abstract dogma. They approve of Marxism, but are not prepared to practice it, or to practice it in full. They are not prepared to replace their liberalism by Marxism. These people have their Marxism, but they have their liberalism as well. They talk Marxism, but practice liberalism. They apply Marxism to others, but liberalism to themselves. They keep both kinds of goods in stock and find a use for each. This is how the minds of certain people work. Liberalism is a manifestation of opportunism and conflicts fundamentally with Marxism. It is negative and objectively has the effect of helping the enemy. That is why the enemy welcomes its preservation in our midst. Such being its nature, there should be no place for it in the ranks of the revolution. We must use Marxism, which is positive in spirit, to overcome liberalism, which is negative. A communist should have largeness of mind, and he should be staunch and active, looking upon the interests of the revolution as his very life, and subordinating his personal interests to those of the revolution. Always and everywhere, he should adhere to the principle and wage a tireless struggle against all incorrect ideas and actions, so as to consolidate the collective life of the party and strengthen the ties between the party and the masses. He should be more concerned about the party and the masses than about any private person, and more concerned about others than about himself. Only thus can he be considered a communist. All loyal, honest, active, and upright communists must unite to oppose the liberal tendencies shown by certain people among us, and set them on the right path. This is one of the tasks of our ideological front. That is combat liberalism. Like I say, very short but very good read. If you enjoyed this reading, maybe think about hitting the like button on this video. Maybe hit subscribe so you don't miss any future videos. And if you want to come and check out what all this being created live, come join me on Kick sometime. I'm live every weekday. Links are in the description of the video. Red salute, comrades.